Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at @It'sJacinho. So on today's show, we're going to be discussing Granit Xhaka and his potential move to Roma. Over the last couple of days, there have been reports that have surfaced that the deal is moving pretty swiftly and it looks like the deal may get done. Oh my gosh, you guys, hold on. The deal is getting done pretty swiftly. Roma is very confident in the deal. Oh my God. Oh. Roma's very confident in the deal, and the deal will get done. I'm sorry that the ringing of the phone just really threw me off there. I don't know why. But yes, so the fee has been set. Xhaka is reportedly pushing for the move. He wants to go, and he's excited to play for Jose Mourinho. Chris Wheatley, who is a journalist for Football London, says that Arsenal have set the price at 20 million for Granit Xhaka. We'll talk about whether that's too low or too high. Roma, of course, is confident in the deal, and we need to sell before we buy. So those are pretty much the scope of that deal. I'm so sorry. There's so much going on right now. But before we go ahead and get started, I'm sorry. It's crazy right now. Okay. Before we get started, let me know if you guys are in the chat box, if you guys are watching, where you're watching in from, and all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. This show has started off so roughly, so roughly. But before we go ahead and start talking about Granit Xhaka. So Xhaka for me is he's a very divisive figure. I think he's probably one of the most divisive figures at the club. He's a part of a group of players that I think you can probably say that their time at Arsenal has been kind of synonymous with failure and the decline of the club. And I would say Xhaka is probably the poster boy for that failure. There are so many people amongst the fan base that just don't like him. They don't rate him. They think that he's the sole reason why we're not doing well and all these types of things. You know, the way I kind of feel about Granit is that, you know, I don't think he was ever the right player to come in. I could not understand for the life of me why we would recruit a player like this. Not because I don't think that he has talent. It's just because the profile of player just without the right pieces around him, he needs a lot of hand holding, in my opinion. So to get the most out of him, you need to have the right people around him. And it's just so strange to me that it took them 5 years. I mean, he's been here for 5 years to bring in a box-to-box midfielder to play with him. That's what he needs. When he played for Switzerland, that's who he plays with, a box-to-box, either Zachariah or Jabril So. And it was the same thing at Borussia Mönchengladbach. He needs somebody athletic near him. And throughout the years, he's played with Santi a little bit, with Aaron Ramsey a little bit, and then we start moving into the Torreiras and the Ceballos and these types of players. And it just never really worked out. It doesn't really seem like there was any thought process in the squad building. And when you spend 35 million on a player, that's a huge chunk of change. Like, I know there's huge fees going around, 50 million, 40 million, 60 million, 70. 35 million is a lot of money. And to put that amount into a cornerstone midfielder and to not surround him with the right type of players to help him thrive, I think just it diminished his value and it hurt the team long term. And a lot of Xhaka's time at Arsenal has been defined by these very public moments of, I don't want to call it stupidity, but just lack of thought. Snatching people down in the box, making rash tackles, strangling people, things like that, fouling people in the box. And it took until almost his last season at Arsenal, or his supposed last season at Arsenal, for us to see what he can actually do. And for me, that's not a failure of Granit Xhaka. That is a failure of the club. When I look at him, all I see is this club has failed, you know, overall. It's not personal for me with Xhaka. It's just, wow, you know, and I know the incident at Crystal Palace against Crystal Palace was very, very, very damaging, and he should never be taking off the armband and throwing it on the ground and all this type of stuff. I understand that that's 100% wrong. And then you have the fans that go and abuse him. I just think it's time for an amicable divorce at this time. It's time for us to separate ways. And it's no, for me, it's not personal with Granit. I just think for his career, probably, and for Arsenal, it's time to move on. That being said, if the deal for Roma fell through or we couldn't get the right fee if he stayed another year, it also wouldn't destroy me, because losing Granit is going to change the dynamics of our midfield. And when you lose Ceballos and you don't bring back Guendouzi and you potentially sell Lucas Torreira as well, we're talking about a massive, massive rebuild in the midfield if you lose Granit as well. So it's okay if we have an idea or a thought process, a plan on how we're going to make up the numbers and replace him and or evolve the midfield into something maybe a little bit more dynamic. But if he stays, I won't cry. If he goes, I won't cry. I think it's better for him to probably go. But with the way that the market is, I wouldn't be surprised if he was here next season. But he is supposedly pushing the move, which usually will make the deal go a lot faster. So let's see what you guys are saying before we kind of talk about price and how the midfield will shape up without him. Let's see. Dubber Ducky says, was Ramsey not a box-to-box or not athletic enough? I don't think Ramsey was athletic enough. He was very much so in the shape. He was kind of more of a Willock versus a Thomas Partey. And if you look at Zachariah, who he's played with Switzerland and Borussia Mönchengladbach and Gibril So, they're more similar to Thomas than Ramsey. There are different types of box-to-box. Ramsey wasn't it because he wasn't going to be able to help defensively. Let's see. Aaron says Basuma isn't a progressive passer like Granit Xhaka. He's a ball carrier. If you actually analyze Basuma's game, he has poor short mid passing range, but he can hit long diagonals though. Yeah, I mean we've analyzed his game so much on this channel. I watch almost every single game that Basuma plays. For me, his job would not be to pass for Arsenal Football Club. It would be to break up play and protect the back line. And Thomas is an excellent progressive passer. He is a progressive dribbler and passer, and he can do a lot of the same passes that Granit Xhaka can do. Maybe not at the same level because Xhaka has very, very good vision, but I don't necessarily feel like having Basuma there would be a hindrance to our progressive passing because Thomas is good at that. At some point, you don't spend 45 million on a player like Thomas Partey and let Granit Xhaka run the midfield. That's just not what you do, in my opinion. So Basuma is not really a replacement for Xhaka. It's an opportunity for us to evolve our midfield into a more grown-up midfield, a midfield that can actually compete in the Premier League, and I think that's what we need. Ian Rogers says, now we need 2 CMs. Basuma is a must. Exactly. But getting Basuma doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get the progressive passer that you're looking for. If you're looking for somebody a little bit more that could pass, that has that passing range. The issue for me is that the person with that passing range cannot be as immobile as Granit Xhaka, or we're in the exact same position. So there's no reason to get rid of Granit Xhaka if we're not going to get a more mobile version of him, if that's what we want to do. And we can have a longer conversation, which we will towards the end of the show, about whether we need to replace Granit Xhaka and his progressive passing, or if we need to evolve the midfield into something a little bit different. We can have that discussion because every midfield is different. Not every single midfield has a player like Granit Xhaka. They don't. Not every single midfield does. I mean, if you look at Liverpool's title-winning midfield, there's not a single player in that midfield that has that passing range. They were all dogs in the middle. Before Thiago came in, they didn't have a passer like that. So I think maybe it is something that we need to have, but I don't think it's the end of the world if we have another way to play. Let's see. Yeah, you guys are saying the same thing. If Xhaka leaves, then we need 2 CMs. Yeah, for sure. I think we're all kind of on the same page as that. And Nikki said, "Don't we need two anyway, though?" Exactly. So I think at first we were kind of thinking that we need one because I didn't know if Granit Xhaka was going to leave. Now that we know that he's potentially going to leave, the conversation becomes something different. And so we'll get into it, but I want to talk about the price first. So the price set by Arsenal supposedly for Granit Xhaka is 20 million, and a lot of people think that that's too low. You know, the consensus on Twitter around the internet is that that's too low for a midfielder of the quality of Granit Xhaka, and based on what we paid for him. His transfer market value is 22 million, I believe. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is just too much. It's so crazy in this house right now. Transfer market value is about 22 million. So I don't think that his price has gone up or his price has stabilized. I really don't. Based on his time at Arsenal, what would give us the idea that his price would stay pretty much the same? I see a lot of people saying we should get what we paid for him, but in what world are we getting 35 million for a 28-year-old with 2 years left on his contract that has the record and reputation of Granit Xhaka? Especially if you're going to sell him to a club in Europe, in Serie A or the French league. These leagues don't have money. They're hemorrhaging money. They don't have the same clout and money coming in as the Premier League. So I don't see us getting more than 20 million for Granit Xhaka. I just don't. I don't, you guys. I really, really don't. If Roma offered us 20 million, I would bite their hand off and move on because I know we want so much for our players, but think about the way that over the years we've spoken about Granit Xhaka. He's crap. He's shit. He's the worst player. He's not good. He's one of the worst midfielders in the Premier League. He's the single reason why we haven't gotten into Champions League. Why now do we think that we should get 35 million for this guy? Why? You know, when Granit Xhaka and Gundogan were on the market at the exact same time, we chose to go get Granit Xhaka for 35 when we could have got Gundogan for 20. So, and I agree with what Zitch is saying that he may have been a little bit overpriced when we brought him in. 5 years ago, the market was a little bit different. So 35 million is a lot, you know? So I'm thinking that I know we want top dollar for our players, but 20 million is about what I think we're going to get. 100%. Like, I think 20 million is fine. If the price is set at 20 million and they give us 17 plus add-ons, I think you take that and you walk away. Granit Xhaka next season will be 29 with a year left on his deal. Nobody's going to pay more than that then. Then they'll be offering you 10 plus add-ons. So I think if he really wants to go, he's pushing the move and they offer you 17 million, you bite their hand off and you walk away. It's fine, you know? But I completely understand that we want top dollar for our players. But I mean, if somebody was offering us Granit Xhaka and they won 35 million, what would you guys say? Exactly. Take it and run. Yes, Gundogan is quite injury prone, but at the same time, I don't think there was a $15 million difference between the two players. I think it was probably a little bit closer. I think we got done on that deal, to be honest. Nikki says it is as good as it gets now. 20 million is half of Basuma. It's a good start. Exactly. And I know that the what is it? Like the anxiety kind of comes from, well, how are we going to replace or buy another midfielder with 17 million? But that's going to be Adu and Arteta's job, is to be able to figure out how to scrounge together some pennies to make it work for us, because we need an overhaul this summer. It may not be the full overhaul, but it needs to be significant enough where we're making progress next season. So they'll have to figure it out, and we have loads of players that we could be trying to get rid of, you know. So yeah. Tanball says talks of Zanderberg. I mean, that's somebody that's probably I think it was like Bjorn was telling me that he's a natural CDM. I know he plays that, but he mostly played like CM or just regular center midfield for Sheffield. If Why did I say Sheffield? Like it was fancy. I'm like, for Sheffield. I don't know why I said that, but he could be somebody that you could bring in. I think they're looking for some. I mean, I think Sheffield wants more than what they're actually going to get for him. But if we could offer them maybe 25 for him, you could bring him in. He's a more mobile version. I don't know if he has the passing range, but then again, I think we're underrating Thomas's passing range. I really, really do. The guy can see a pass just like Granit Xhaka can. It may not be. It doesn't have to be. It can be just close enough to Granit Xhaka. It doesn't have to be as good. I think Thomas has just as much ability to do those line breaking passes as Granit. So there's definitely that. But maybe Sanderberg could replace him, And then we still have to. I guess the club has to figure out if they want to actually replace him in terms of replace his skill set, because that's different than just replacing him for the sake of numbers, because you could also just bring in a completely different profile of player. Like there's rumors going around about Renato Sanchez. Now, I don't know what the likelihood of a transfer like that to go through. But Renato Sanchez is nothing like Granit Xhaka in any way, shape, or form. They're completely different. But that would change the dynamics of your midfield. Now you're talking about three dogs in midfield. Basuma, Thomas Partey, and Renato Sanchez would be three dogs in midfield. You may not have the same. It may not be like a City midfield, but it would definitely be closer to like more of like a Liverpool type midfield. And you would have a lot of ball progression. You'd have guys that can beat somebody on the dribble and also make a tackle. So there's different ways to build your midfield based on the way that you want to play. And if the rumors are true that Arteta wants to become a 4-3-3 manager, that would change it as well. If you want to bring in somebody like a Koopman Miners that's very similar to Granit Xhaka, then you're not going to be playing a 4-3-3, are you? Let's see. Jonathan Sinclair says, sell Xhaka for 20 and buy Awa for 30. I mean, I haven't seen any concrete links to Awa this summer, to be honest. It seems like that's kind of fallen off. Like they're saying that he's available, but I've yet to see anybody truly link us to him. But I would bring in Awa if I could. I think he'd fit in, play multiple positions, can play deeper in midfield as well, like a little bit further forward. And he's more of a ball progressor. He does have a key pass on him. And so he would be a good option if that's the direction you want to go into. Let's see. Aaron says Locatelli will be the right profile to replace Xhaka as a ball progressor. So I don't watch the Italian league, but if you guys know about Locatelli, can you guys let me know if he plays in a pivot or if he plays in a single pivot, a double pivot? How does he play? Does he play in a midfield three? What is his how does he play in the midfield? I know that he's like a CDM type of player, but tell me just a little bit more about him. Yo-Yo said, raid Lille, please take their manager too. I mean, we love a Lille player, and I would love to have like Luis Campos as our director of football. That would be amazing. I wouldn't be surprised if we had brought in another Lille player. Jet Next Door says, please no, Renato Sanchez will flatter to deceive. I mean, he's also a hospital bed. He's 100% injury prone. But there are like some loose links to him. So, I mean, we're going to do at least one stupid signing, aren't we? We're good for at least one stupid signing, aren't we? Let's see. Yo-Yo says, Arsenal lack mobility and athleticism. The side needs ball carriers and press-resistant players. Now, Yo-Yo, I tend to agree with you. I tend to lean a little bit more towards I like a Liverpool midfield versus more of like a Man City midfield. I prefer more dogs in midfield that can win the ball and then dribble forward and just take us up the pitch versus somebody who's constantly looking for a pass. That's just me. But some people think we need a more passing midfield, some like more Koopman Miners type players or whatever. So it just depends on but what we think doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't know what Arteta's planning on. I really, really don't. Billy says, for me, there's no point in changing to a 4-3-3. We basically play a 4-2-3-1. We thrive playing that way. In possession, we actually play the same anyway in a 2-3-5. I mean, I think I think we have the ability to kind of switch either way. I think we'll always have the ability to either play with I think it's just are we going to play with a single pivot or a double? And that's pretty much just it. Like are the two players in front of the pivot going to be are we going to have two more progressive players or two more defensive players? That's always kind of how I think about it. And I always think that we're going to have the option to do both. I don't think Arteta's ever going to say we're a 4-3-3 team or a 4-2-3-1 team. I think he's going to want to have the ability to do both. And if you bring in somebody like Basuma, you would be able to play in a double pivot and in a single because he can play on his own. And I think he could play that way a little bit better than Thomas. We saw that Thomas he suffered a little bit when he played alone in that midfield as a single pivot. But I think we'll always have the option to do more than just one thing. Arteta seems to really like flexibility in his players and his tactics. Io says, Awar, not for Arsenal. Trust me on that. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, Io. We know you don't like Awar. We know. Billy says, I personally think our first choice is Camavinga, although it's highly unlikely. What do you think, Jess? I mean, we always pick one player that's so not coming to us to spend the entire transfer window trying to get. I mean, Awar was last season, so maybe we'll try to get Camavinga. He's not coming to Arsenal. I just don't see it. Isn't the asking price like 100 million or some silliness like that? Didn't he ask to go to PSG already? Isn't PSG interested in him? I just can't see him coming. I think it's multiple things. I really like Camavinga as a player, but he's also really young, and we have a lot of young players already. And I've said this a lot on the podcast. I think we need players in that 23 to 25 range, and I know that Camavinga may seem mature and further along in his development than we think, but he's playing in Ligue 1. So the likelihood of him coming to the Premier League, I mean, he also wants to start games, and I just don't know what the likelihood of that is. So based on the price, what it would take to bring him in, his age profile, it's just, I can't see it, you guys. I can't see it. But I can see us chasing him all summer and then do something stupid at the very end when it doesn't come to fruition. I don't want us to be the team that gets used all summer and then he ends up going where he really wants to go. Like, let's just focus on us. Let's see. Right. Every club is interested in Camavinga. I mean, he's like the hot topic, isn't he? So I don't think we have a chance in hell to get him, to be honest. Aaron says, Arsenal Football Club's philosophy, built from Wenger, is based on midfielders who are acute and smart passing. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I think Arsene, I think he liked players that had good footballing IQ, period. I think the level of footballing IQ that has come through this club has been very high up until the last couple of years. And whether that player was a Vieira or a Cesc or a Rosicky or a Nasri or a Jack Wilshere or a Mesut Ozil, they've all had very, very high footballing IQ. And I think besides the athleticism, that's definitely what we're missing out on. I think the profile player can always change, but the level of footballing IQ has really just went down. You see Smith Rowe and Xhaka are two of the only players on our team. We have a handful of players that have like very high footballing IQ. Everybody else is just not at the level. So I think I agree with that he built that philosophy and maybe we veered away from it. I think the profile of player can always be different, but the footballing IQ has to be there. Let's see. H7 says Basuma, Burj, Bundia, the magical bees will get us firing again. The funny thing about that H7 is I would take that because I know it's not the most exciting, but at this point in our progression or our evolution or whatever the project, we're not going to be able to address everything in one window. And I know that we want to be able to attract the Camavingas. We want to be able to bring in the Hakimis, but I think there's progression that can be we can progress bringing in players of that profile, and even if they're not coming off of like the biggest teams in Europe, I think we can still be good with them. But there's a lot of people in this fan base that they would spit up blood if that was what we did in the transfer window. Like for real. You guys can go ahead and put comments in the or questions in the comment section. Um, Questions in the comment section. I think that's what I meant to say. Your thoughts on Granit Xhaka, is if the fee is too low, and talk about how we replace him, all those types of things. We could do Q&A for the next like 10 minutes or so. Let's see. Dubber Ducky says, what do you think about Torreira? He changed his tune saying he won't rule out anything. I don't know. I think he's saying that he can stay at Atletico. He has a deal with Arsenal for 2 more years, so he has to respect that. But then there's rumors that he could go to Lazio on loan or something like that. Look, I think Torreira is pretty much good as gone. You know, if he's not sold this summer, he will be loaned out. I just don't think he's coming back for multiple reasons. I don't think Arteta particularly likes the profile of player, and I don't think he ever really adapted to London. So I think it would be best out of him, Guendouzi, and Granit Xhaka. He's the one that I would want to leave the most because he just never adapted, and we don't need anybody that's not sure. You know what I mean. But the good thing about Torreira is that his value has not really diminished over the last couple of years. He's had strange last 2 years. Somebody who came off of a real high, playing for Uruguay, and then it kind of just petered out at Arsenal, and then he didn't play a lot for Atletico. They're saying that Atletico would maybe be interested in keeping him. I don't know, but his value is still pretty much at like 24 million, which is about what we bought him for. So if we could just get him like a good loan, get him somewhere where he could show what he could do, and then we could sell him the summer after, I think that's the best thing for all parties at this point. Don One says, thoughts on Arsenal finishing in top 4 without poor VAR decisions. I mean, I don't want to get into it with the tinfoil hat and the conspiracy theories. I do think that we get we do get messed over by VAR quite a bit, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I mean, if we didn't get if we got those decisions, they went in our direction. Is there any guarantee that we would have won the same amount of games and actually made it in the top 4? You know what I mean? Like, I think on paper that sounds good, but I still don't think we were anywhere near a top 4 team this season, with or without VAR, like at all. But I do think that sometimes we do get messed over by VAR. It's just so unfortunate. I don't like VAR. Not I think the technology is a good idea, but the people running it don't know what they're doing, and they don't understand clear and obvious, which I think is the biggest part of it. Is they're re-refereeing the game. And so now that the referees feel like their decisions don't matter, they don't even make decisions on the pitch. And it's just becoming a complete joke. I don't know why the Premier League is the only league that can't seem to get this right. So yeah, but we're definitely nowhere near a top 4 team, I think. Um, You guys, I don't see the Neves thing. I don't. Imtiaz, you're not the only person that said Ruben Neves, Ruben Neves. Like, what is he actually good at? Like, name something that he's good at. Like, what is his elite skill? Or is he just kind of okay at everything? Like, why do we love him so much? Let me know. Yo-Yo says, without Xhaka, Louise, Hecky B, what will Arteta what will stop Arteta from falling victim to a player mutiny next season? I don't know. Like, I know you think that he has his lieutenants, right? I don't know. I don't think there will be a player mutiny next season. I think the players that will be left, if those players leave, besides maybe an Aubameyang, like Arteta, you know, they've said as much. You know, they like him, they rate him. You know, I don't think a player mutiny would happen unless Guendouzi was in that locker room. Um, you know, so I don't know, but I think that I don't know. I know this kind of comes from the whole lieutenants thing, but I don't think there even will be a player mutiny. I think the players like him. Oh, let's see. Van says, Jess, who would you rather keep and play between Guendouzi and Joe Willock? I'd rather keep and play Joe Willock. I think Guendouzi, he has talent, but it's not really developed at all, like not developed enough to want him to be at Arsenal Football Club. And I don't like his attitude. I never have. And I understand he's a passion merchant and he has fight that other players don't have, but he's not defensively responsible. He's not really tactically astute. He's very much just do what I feel like doing on the pitch, and you can't do that at this level. And there's just nothing that I've seen from him. What is his elite skill? Like most players that you look at, they have something that they do really well, at least one thing. And Guendouzi does a lot of things okay, but not at an elite level. Whereas Joe Willock has an elite skill of getting in the box and scoring goals. So if I had to keep one of them, it would be Joe Willock. Dubber Ducky says, is top four the bare minimum for next season or is it top six? I think it's top six. Let's think about this a little bit. So I know because there's a lot of people saying like, well, we need to get from top eight to top four. And I think that doesn't seem like a big jump because that's only four spots. But at the same time, based on the amount of teams that are in between us in those spots and the teams that are going to improve and essentially shut us out of that top four. I can't see it. So yeah, Manchester City, who's going to be in the top four. Liverpool, with a horrendous season, still made it into the top four, top three at that. So they've already brought in Kanate, and they will bring in more players, and their players that have been injured will come back. So there's Liverpool and Man City, and then you have Chelsea and Manchester United. Whatever you think about those two teams, they're further along in their progress, in their project, whatever you want to call it. They're further along than we are. Then you have Leicester, who's always in and around. Of course, they bottle, but if they continue to get fifth place, then there's only the sixth spot. You know, I just don't think we're going to make it, even if we have a really good summer. I think top six is where we need to be. And I think we can get close to Leicester. I definitely think some of the teams that did really better this season, like you look at like somebody like a West Ham, I think they'll fall off because they're not going to have the type of depth necessary to play in the European competitions. So I think they'll suffer. Leicester will also suffer because when they have to play in multiple competitions and they don't have enough depth, they tend to suffer as well. And we won't have that to think about. And then you have Spurs, who, if for some reason they're able to keep Harry Kane, will still be a pretty decent side. So I think top six is it. You know, I really, really do. But that being said, if we're nowhere near top six in November, if we fall off the way we did this season, right at November, I think we have to maybe part ways with Arteta. But yeah, I think top six is it. I think so. Let's see. Conroy says Granit is our best midfielder. We would be stupid to sell, my opinion. We're not going to buy anybody better. I've seen a lot of this, and I respect this opinion. He has been our best midfielder, and whether or not you think that that's okay, like, it's like even like David Luiz being our best center back. I think that also speaks to where we are as a club to have very limited players or error prone players that are our best players in those positions. I think Granit Xhaka has been our best midfielder this season, but I still think we should move on from him because I think he limits us in terms of our flexibility. He can only play in a pivot. If we ever want to play differently, he couldn't play. He wouldn't be beneficial to us. Um, but improving upon him will be difficult because as much as we don't want to believe it, Granit Xhaka is a good player. And so some of these mediocre options that I'm seeing float around, like Ruben Neves, it's kind of like, does he improve us though? You could get him for 30 million. He's played in the Premier League and he's 23 years old, so he ticks those boxes. But does he really improve us, or do we like him because he plays for another team? There's a lot of players that we look at other teams that we rate highly that aren't actually better than some of our players, to be honest. And Ruben Neves to me is one of them. So I think it will be difficult to improve on him if we don't have the right amount of money to do so. But I do think that we should move on if we can. But I definitely respect your opinion. Let's see. C. Wilder says Guendouzi plays for Guendouzi FC, whichever team he's in. Yeah, for sure. I think he literally sits there when we lose games and just like laughs and has a good time and has a drink. I think he's one of those. Like if you do him dirty or he thinks you did him dirty, he just like can't get over it. He constantly goes back and is like, "Thank you, Emery, for giving me a chance, la la la." And I just can't I can't get over the fact that I think he's just trying to wind us up or something. Like nobody cares. Get out. Aaron says, thoughts on Hamza Chowdhury from Leicester to fill the diversity quota? Oh, I haven't really seen a lot of him, to be honest. What kind of midfielder is he? Like, what does he do? Because he doesn't really. he- I, when I watch Leicester play, I don't see him playing. So not saying he's not a good player, but I'm just saying that I don't know enough about him to give like a really solid answer on it. For me, if I had to choose right off the top of my head what two players I would bring in as midfielders for Arsenal, it would be Awa and Basuma. That's who I would bring in. Because he can play in multiple positions. He'd be like 25 million or something. And I just think he would give us that ball progression. It's different. You can progress the ball in multiple different ways, passing or dribbling. He's very good at progressing the ball with his feet. He he offers you a little bit more in the final third. I know he may have something maybe with his attitude isn't great, but other than that, I think he could be the steal of the summer for whatever team that gets it over the line. So those would be the two midfielders I brought in. And also, he's not African, so he wouldn't be going to AFCON and all these things. I know that that's scary for a lot of people. It is scary because we don't really know what that's going to look like. But those are the two players that I would be looking to bring in with an attacking midfielder of some sort, you know. So that's just me. Let's see. Yo-Yo says skill set matters most. The new metronome will be either a center back or center midfielder, and he must not be one-footed nor slow. Yeah, we have to make sure that we stay away from players that are super one-footed. And to be honest, I think we need to maybe cool down on the left-footed players as well. We have so many lefties. We're so left-footed. It's crazy. And watching Odegaard and Pepe try to get the ball on their left foot, standing right next to each other was really painful for me to watch. And I just want less of that. um, I'm seeing a lot of Koopman miners. Reminds me of Matic in his prime. Koopman miners is a captain in midfield. There are two amazing players that would upgrade on Xhaka. Koopman miners, who will be available for under 20 million, and Maximilian Arnold of Wolfsburg for a slightly higher fee. I have to look at Koopa Miners a little bit more. When I saw him, I did see a Granit Xhaka. I saw it. Like, I was like, okay, he definitely would be somebody that could come in. But do we want another Xhaka, or do we want a different profile in midfield? That is the question. And we'll know when, if and when we bring in that midfielder, what we're looking at, because the assumption is that because Arteta relied heavily on Granit Xhaka, that's the type of midfielder that he'd want. But when you look at the other midfielders that he had at his disposal, I think Xhaka was the natural, it was like natural selection type of thing. Like, you were always going to go towards Xhaka. So was Arteta playing him because and choosing him because that's the type of midfielder that he wants, or because that's what he had? So we'll see. I mean, I think we're making a lot of assumptions. I do that, thinking, what does Arteta really want? They said this or he said that. We don't know what he really wants. He could really throw us for a loop, you know. Let's see. Everybody saying stay away from Chowdhury. I've never really seen the guy play for a significant amount of time. Aaron says, I wish we could get prime Santi Cazorla back. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that would be the dream, right? There's no real players out there that really remind me of him. Some people are saying that Buendia reminds them of him. I mean, no, not for me. Maybe like Tielemans in terms of passing range, but Cazorla was different gravy. He was a different level, you know. Billy says AFCON is not a problem if we have an adequate squad. Liverpool have their two main strikers go to AFCON, yet they can still be up there and abouts. And this is a really good point. And I was thinking about this and talking on Twitter about this yesterday, that I don't think you make long-term squad building decisions based on a month-long tournament that happens every 2 years. A lot of people are saying that's why we shouldn't get Basuma, but for me, like, somebody even said he hasn't played for Bali since like 2018. Like, it's what is the likelihood? Okay, so the length of the tournament is about 9 weeks. What's the likelihood of all of our African players getting to the end of that tournament? They could be back in 3 to 4 weeks, 5 weeks maybe. And I think we're traumatized by this past season, where we did pretty much throw away the entire season in 1 month. I know that that's there. That feeling like, well, if they're gone for that amount of time, the season can be over. I know this may be unpopular, but I don't think that would happen again. I don't think we would go through a 7 to 8 game period and lose damn near every game. I don't see it, not with this team, not the way that we're playing, even with what we have now. So for me, I think you bring in the player that you want and you make adjustments. I don't think you get a different player because they'll be gone for 5 weeks every 2 years. For me, it's just a little bit over the top. And I understand Thomas will be gone as well. Aubameyang, we've already played pretty much a full season without him being at the highest level. And then Pepe, Saka can play as well. We don't really care about El Neni. So it's really just about making sure that you have two backup midfielders that can play in that position. And for me, it can be done, but they have to use their brains and make it work. They'll have to figure that out. So as long as we have people that can play in those positions, it's not an issue for me. I think it's something that we're placing a lot of anxiety over because we're traumatized, and I understand that, but I don't think it's as big of a deal as it seems. Nudon says, 100% agree on the one-footedness of our players. It's a huge problem, and our team invites constant pressure and limits our attacking options, and it stops us from being able to play quick. I think having so many players that are not on their right foot naturally keeps us from being able to play quick 1-2. And you just have too many players wrestling to try to get it on that good foot. Gabriel's one of them. Saka can be like that. He's working on it. Pepe is definitely like that. Odegaard is like that. And Tierney is not like that because he naturally plays on the left-hand side, so he doesn't have to like wrestle it onto his other foot. But we have so many players that are just like constantly trying to get it onto their left, and it's like, wow, we would be so much quicker if we had more balance. Yo-Yo said, should Arsenal consider a player swap with Roma? I mean, if you could bring in Diawara, that would solve some of our issues. If you swapped Xhaka for Diawara, that would solve your issue. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't solve your issue. It wouldn't. What am I saying? It would not solve your issue. I mean, he's the right profile, but he's African as well. So no, it wouldn't. Maybe who do they even have that we would want? But sidebar, something that I thought of that was kind of funny. It may not be funny to you guys, but it's kind of funny to me. I remember Mkhitaryan kind of talking crap when he left Arsenal about how he kind of came to Arsenal to play for Arsenal and it was so free flowing. And then when Emery came in, he just like lost his joy. Now you're going to be playing under Jose Mourinho. Are you going to be playing free flowing football then, Mickey? No, you won't. So I thought that was hilarious. But Roma, what players do they even have? I don't watch that league. Knowing us, we would end up with under. He did barely played for Leicester. So you guys would have to let me know what players they have. That would be decent. Yo-Yo says, having heavily criticized Abba, who do you believe are the 3 best and 3 worst captains in the Premier League and why? The 3 best captains. Henderson is probably one of them. Fernandinho, when he captains for Manchester City, I think he does a good job. Who else is a captain? I have to think about it. Those are the 2 best for me at the moment. Who's another captain, you guys? I don't think Dunk is a really good captain. Maybe Declan Rice. Is he the captain when Noble is not there? Maybe. Oh, maybe Jack. He definitely, he's not your ideal captain because I think he plays in the forward roles, and I think not ideally, but traditionally your captain is somebody in your midfield or in your back line. But I think he does what captains need to do, which is drag your team up when they're suffering. He does a good job at that. The worst captains I wouldn't know because I only recognize really good captains. I can't recognize the worst ones. But what are you getting at, Yo-Yo? What are you getting at? Because Aubameyang has to be one of the worst captains. I mean, obviously, he's got to be one of the worst. And it's not that I think that he's trying to do a bad job. I just think he's not a natural captain. And so when you give him that to placate him, I think you're putting unnecessary stress on a player that doesn't need it, that needs to focus on scoring goals. He has too many things to think about. But if I had to pick out 3 captains that I'd like, it would probably be Jack, Fernandinho when he captains Man City. Sometimes it's Kevin De Bruyne, sometimes it's not. And Jordan Henderson, for sure. I think he's the best captain. Definitely not going to mention the fridge. Bruno, you could say is a good captain, but he's not the captain of Manchester United. So there's that as well. Let's see. Renee says, Roma has a lot of older players. Yes, they do. Billy says, I'd take Pellegrini. Is he one of those that kind of plays off of the striker in a midfield role? What is his position? Nudon says, I watched Roma live against Atalanta during a holiday in Rome. The Atalanta team had 1 African player, and every time he received the ball, the stadium exploded with monkey chats. It was disgusting. Oof. Yeah, no bueno, no bueno. Oof. Yeah, I don't know what the dynamics are like there in terms of like the racism and stuff. Like racism is everywhere, but that is disgusting. Oof. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for the show. But before you guys leave, I really want to thank you guys for all of your support, liking, sharing, subscribing, all those things. Because of you guys, I have a pretty exciting announcement that I'll be working with Blue Wire Podcast now. Blue Wire is kind of like a collective, a community of podcasts, and they have acquired my podcast and they're hosting it and all that kind of stuff. And what that really means for you guys, which is the most important thing, is that the quality of my podcast will improve. I'll be able to give you guys better audio quality, better video quality, and hopefully get some membership schemes going for you guys and just upgrade the content and make it better for you, because of you, I have this amazing opportunity. So I really want to thank you guys for all of your support and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so if you see Blue Wire floating around on some of my on my podcast cover and things like that, it's because they've acquired SheKnowsArsenal. And I really want to thank you guys for the bottom of my heart. So from now on, the podcast is just going to get better. And I hope that you guys can continue to follow me and all that kind of stuff, because we're just going to keep this thing going. We're going to keep this thing going. So yeah, let's see. In 10 minutes, I'll be back here to talk about, have my reaction to Jack Grealish's potential $100 million move to Manchester City. So we'll talk about that. It'll be a quick reaction, talk about what the likelihood of that may be, how I think he'll fit into the Manchester City team. Is this the right move for Manchester City? All those types of things. So again, we're doing some non-Arsenal content. We'll be doing some Euro content as well. So stick around for that. Come back. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.